Hey everybody, so I hope y'all don't mind if we walk and talk, but I'm in Sendai this weekend, up in Tohoku, if any of you all have ever been here, and I'm on my way somewhere, and I wanted to make a video at some point today, and I thought, well, why not multitask? So here we are, and so today's February 5th, and as many of you know, the state of emergency was supposed to end the day after tomorrow, so on February the 7th. If you've been following the Japanese news recently, you know that that is not going to happen. They have extended it tentatively for a month. I imagine that, as was the case with the one in the spring, they will actually end up ending it a little bit early, given that their benchmark for doing so was 500 daily infections in Tokyo, and they are well on their way to that. But the importance of that, of course, is that until that is rolled back, there is literally no chance of the entry ban that has been reimposed being rolled back. So as of now, I would say around the 1st of March and probably a little bit later is the soonest that those of you who have visas to come to Japan and study, to work, and do other things on a medium to long-term basis are going to be able to come back. Tourism and love is not tourism, hashtag love is not tourism, who really knows? I mean, that's the other thing that has happened, as nothing has changed about the overall entry ban, is that there's been all kinds of controversy about the Olympics. First, they said that privately they had concluded they need to be canceled, which, spoiler alert, I actually don't think that's too unlikely. I'm sure that those conversations have taken place both in Tokyo and at the IOC. But then there was some ridiculous comment from Mori-san, who I don't even remember his official position, but he has some high up position with the Olympics, and he might have been the one who paid the bribe, I don't know, but he said something about women talk too much in meetings, and there's this whole uproar about that. He needs to resign, the Olympics need to be canceled, blah, 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 blah. I have to be honest, look, I'm a feminist. I believe in the equality of the sexes, and you're not going to find me gleefully engaging in misogyny, but at the same time, with all the other fucked up shit that underlies the status quo of the Olympics right now, not to mention, you know, the precarious status of people who want to enter Japan for all kinds of reasons, an 80-year-old man making a mildly sexist comment, because let's be honest, compared to what's said in the United States and many of our countries, I mean, that's very tame. It's very 1970s. Women talk a lot, okay. It seems silly to focus on that. And I think that it really distracts from a lot of more important issues. Again, the most important one being that anyone who wants to get into Japan right now, even those of you who have legal authorization to be here, aren't able to do so. And that problem is going to be continuing with indefinite effect. And yeah, it just seems kind of silly. And I mean, I guess to sort of go on a longer and broader diatribe, I just find this continued inertia that the world is in right now to be so incredibly frustrating. You know, people are caught in this cycle of not only surrendering their basic human rights, most importantly, the freedom of movement, which is a basic and inalienable human right, but they're begging for it. You know, there was one case the other day in Perth, Western Australia, I guess, and they ended up locking down the city for 5 days. And apparently, based on polls of the population, most people were thrilled with it. In fact, some people, I guess, wanted to be locked down longer and harder. And, you know, I've spoken out before about why I think it's ridiculous that countries like Australia and New Zealand are being praised for their COVID responses for a whole host of reasons. Mostly because their geographic isolation makes it unrealistic to expect to be able to duplicate their quote-unquote success. But I just, part of the reason that, in spite of the fact that I spend so much time in Asia, that I am so passionate about traveling to Asia and inspiring other people to do so, part of the reason I insist on using the China virus phrase that Donald Trump used, and why I think that's probably my favorite thing about him, is that the pandemic right now isn't just about the spread of a respiratory virus, which happened to come from Wuhan. Let's be frank. It's about the spread of authoritarianism around the globe, right? The citizens of previously free countries not only accepting authoritarian intrusions on their personal liberties, but asking for them, begging for them, being thankful for them. That is truly chilling. And if you don't feel that way, first of all, I don't know why you're watching my videos, because these videos at their core are about the restoration of the freedom of movement. Because this is the other thing I wanted to say. So I've spoken out a lot about how much solidarity I feel with the Love Is Not Tourism people, and how much I want them to be able to see their partners again. But the real issue is that, yes, love is not tourism, but tourism is not frivolous either, okay? The joy of travel is something that should not be denied to anybody under any circumstance. Once again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but y'all need to hear what I say. Freedom of movement is a human right, a basic human right. And I think that regardless of the situation that's going on health-wise, regardless of how you feel about the pandemic, people are smart enough to make their own decisions about what they do and how they want to keep themselves and their families safe. Entry bans make no sense in free countries. Tests, yes. Requiring vaccines, this might sound controversial, but I think that's perfectly fine as long as the entry bans are rolled back. But the idea that you are going to permanently and unquestioningly ban people from entering your country without any possibility for them to get around that, even if they have to go to these ridiculous quarantine concentration camps that they have in Australia and New Zealand, and I guess they're trying to build in Canada and Germany. It's inhumane. It's inhumane, and it needs to stop. And unfortunately, I don't think Asia, or the Asia Pacific, if we include Australia and New Zealand, is going to be leading the way in this regard. But I hope that some country will be bold enough to say no. This hasn't worked. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And let's be honest, if travel bans worked, we wouldn't have hundreds of millions of cases around the world and 2 million people dead from this thing. That's just the reality. So I guess to recap, because this has been a little bit of a rant, I'm a little pumped up since I'm walking through the snow this morning, but to recap, yeah, state of emergency is still in place. I suspect it'll be lifted a little bit before its new expiration date of March 7th. That doesn't mean that the ban is automatically going to be lifted. The Olympics are a fucking mess. Nobody knows if they're going to take place. And while love is not tourism, love is indeed not tourism, tourism is also not frivolous. And people should have the right to move about the world freely. Freedom of movement is a human right. And the sooner the leaders of previously free countries can remember that, the better humanity will be for it. So I hope you all are doing well. I will certainly be back with you in March when and if the state of emergency lifts, and hopefully a little bit before then. And do your best to keep the faith. I know it's hard. It was almost impossible for me last year, but eventually we all will be back in Japan. All right, bye.